everybody, welcome in. Oh, I think we're good now. All right.
Yep.
Everybody, welcome into the season 8 of Sideline Fantasy Football. Can't believe it's season 8 already. Time has absolutely flown, but we are hyped. We are ready to go. Welcoming in my co-host here today, Jordan Charles. He's been an OG member since year 1, and me and him are also in the fantasy baseball playoffs. So excuse us if for some reason our minds are in two places at once because we're doing pretty good in these things so far. But welcome in, Crimmy Charles. How we doing?
Good. That actually reminded me. I got an alert. I need to set my lineup in the next, I think, 27 minutes. I shouldn't have to do this. I'd like to thank Austin Riley and Michael Harris for doing nothing last night and making me play Kyle. So I'm having a great time.
It's gonna be a good one. We're both playing some Carbonies this week. It's gonna be a fun one. But obviously the focus for this one is on football. We're ready to get rolling. Football season is right around the corner. We're excited. Any any kind of thoughts heading into it? What did you think? What was your main thing heading into this draft? Obviously, this is season 8. We've had such a loyal league. It's been real fun. It's been a real active league. For a lot of years with the same group of guys. And for the most part, stayed the same group of guys for the last 5 years. What what did you think was heading into the draft? Do you feel like you're kind of knowing what people are going to do a little bit more, or is this league just kind of always a toss up heading into draft night?
I would say we have some giveaways. I mean, a lot of our guys like
Dave,
running backs.
sorry.
Yes. So we need running backs. We're going to go for a run. This year was pretty different with the likes of like Cup, Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, those guys being first round talents, but dropping off because the need for a running back in this league is always strong. And I mean, I felt the pain last year when I had Diggs and Adams that didn't really work out, so I know why. And also, yes, Dave. I mean, it's a resident Chargers fan. I think he's the only guy in the league that will kind of prioritize his own team, which isn't awful when you're a Chargers fan at this point in time, but you kind of know where guys are going to go in relation to that, and we kind of saw that, as the draft went on. So surprises, there were a few, but I thought that this year of all years was really, really different because, I mean, some of these names are getting older. Some of these guys are kind of getting dinged up, and a lot of it's like the league is kind of changing up the guard, where now we have this kind of lull of players where we're all like, okay, we know what they're all about, but there's nobody kind of making the most noise now, at least.
Yeah, and I remember talking to you just a few hours prior to the draft, and I'm like, NFL.com had three, because I picked 7. NFL.com had 3 receivers going in the top like 6 or 7, and I'm like, I just don't see it happening in our league. I said I think one receiver goes, probably Cup. That's it. I didn't think it was gonna be Kyle, but I think he was kind of a little bit pigeonholed into that because he probably didn't like Mixon and Harris as much as Cup. So 5 running backs went there. I think overall in the first round we still had 9 out of the 12 teams take running backs, the other 3 being um, the top 3 receivers, Cup, Jefferson, and Chase. But yeah, let's take a look at the draft just for fun. Yeah, there we go. And what kind of things, obviously, we're going to talk about each team individually, so we don't really want to break that down necessarily. But in these first few rounds, anything shock you, or was it kind of status quo?
Um,
I think
it
Diggs
was more,
fallen. I think
yeah,
Diggs fallen was a big one. That's the one
yeah,
thing that kind of jumps out to me. And obviously, the quarterback being taken, I guess you can argue that Tyler could have been round 3, round 2 because he went back to back. But the quarterbacks, it's always really interesting to see when they fall off the board. What do you think?
yeah. For the most part, it was status quo. I mean, considering how our league kind of operates, but I mean, we can talk, break it down further once we go team by team. But it was surprising to see Diggs fall to the 2-7 spot there. Outside of that, really, it kind of went as I expected, just because again, running backs are few and far between. You can never have enough, and a lot of teams, actually not really a lot. Only 3 teams went RB in the first 2 rounds, which is surprising because I know everyone wants an RB1, but having that RB2 we've seen year in and year out can be very, very effective and allow you to kind of just once it gets in the middle of the season, like you have the ability to move guys around and kind of get more bang for your buck that way.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure, no doubt about it. So let's just do it. Let's dive into it. Let's start looking at these teams. I mean, and honestly, like I said, the draft is kind of won through those late rounds. And again, it's always going to be interesting. Me and you do it all the time, where we look back late in the season and see where guys were taken and the fun of it. And it was a fun draft night, right? The whole do we draft, do we not? What do we do? Guys can't stay up an hour. It became kind of crazy. You almost lost your top, didn't you?
Oh, I lost it. That was just frustrating because getting to that point in time to at least find a time to draft. We changed it 3 different times. That shit was annoying.
It was
But when it was
great.
all said and done, everyone had a good time. I had a good time. So, I mean, it was just a matter of correcting not really our
Yeah.
mistake, NFL.com's mistake. But we'll forgive them for
And
this one blunder in 8 years. I can live with it.
And you know how much shit we're gonna get? I can already hear it. I can hear it in Kyle's text voice. The fact that we're gonna open this pod showing off the sleeper app and all the grand colors and nice things with all the positions and all that of the draft recap, and then we're going to NFL.com to show it. But hey, it's kind of what we had to do simply because of technical difficulties. That was great fun. But yeah, we're here. We're ready to roll. Let's get going. So here's how we're gonna do it, guys. We're gonna go division by division because in our league, as you guys know, or for the newbies, we got Bryce in the league this year. Fun, fun. Top three teams from each division make the playoffs. So obviously, we've had it in past seasons where a team might be the fifth or sixth best record, but they don't get in. Top three, each division get in. That's the way it goes. Each division winner gets a bye. It's fun. It leads to some really fun inner trash division talk. This and all that. Our two division drafters this year were Dana for Division One and Jay for Division Two, representing Franklin. So it goes without saying that we welcome a new player or a new member to the champion club. Jay, what do you think about him winning last year, going from never making the playoffs to getting it done?
I mean, it was refreshing. It wasn't me who won, but to see two new faces in the championship and not have to hear Rob or you go, "I'll suck your cock, I'll suck your cock," for a whole nother season. I loved it. I mean, it wasn't me. I would love that more so. However,
Yeah.
I'm just glad it was not you.
I've already said when I get my fourth ring, so hopefully by the time we do the show next year, when I get my fourth ring, I actually will get replica rings, and by the time we do the show next year, I'm just gonna be the whole time you're just gonna see me like this with four. I do got this one that I got over the summer, but I'm gonna have four fantasy rings, so it's coming. I'm almost a 50% winner. That's not bad. 3-7. I did 3-5. That is a dynasty, right? 3-5 seasons. Is that the E Rock
No,
dynasty? Do we call it?
no comment. No comment.
Okay. Well, we'll see. We'll see what happens. We'll see if anyone else joins the club. We got some fun league history to go over as well when we get to it. So you're on the top. Mahomie still Division One. We're gonna take a look at Crimson's team first. We're gonna go right at you, Crim, co-host. Before we get there, okay? Crimson and the 7-year league history. We're entering year 8. I always like doing the fun histories. You know, I'm a nerd with that stuff. In the 7 years in the league history, Jordan Crimmy Charles has 46 wins, 48 losses. Okay. He's made the playoffs 5 times in 7 years, and he's 4-5 in the playoffs. So even though you've made the playoffs 5 out of 7 years, you actually have a below 500 record in the regular season. And when we look at some of these other records, that's going to be a little like odd. But what do you think about that? 5 times in 7 years, that's a good rate. But wow, that's a bad. I mean, not bad, but not the best head-to-head record.
I mean, I'll take it. It really came down to once we implemented the drafting of the divisions, where I mean, I'm just in the divisions where people are worse for wear. I mean,
Yeah.
sure, we've seen now that the other division have, the fourth best team would beat out our top team, but I mean, at that point in time, it's not really how the formula works, and it's unfortunate. But
I
it's
also feel
see
like
it.
you had a year where you went like 2-12, and that really like screwed you, right?
Yeah, I think that was. I feel like last year I maybe won. It was the had to been that year, or it was 2 wins or 3 wins. Like
Yeah. Yeah, I
shit
don't
was
know.
just not good.
Yeah, so let's jump into it. So, like I said, you're actually tied for the most playoff appearances in the league with 5. We'll get to the others here in a bit, but let's look at your team. All right, you obviously, I'll lead it off. Actually, you know what? Let's have you lead it off. I want to hear what you think about your team before I give any type of sway or thought process in your mind. What were you thinking heading into this draft? Obviously, we're not going to break down every single individual player, but tell me what you like about your team. Maybe something that you could work on. Overall consensus.
Well, overall, I love it. I do love it.
Okay, okay.
Just as the season went on, or off season went on, getting more clarity on the Kamara situation, it allowed me to kind of add another piece to the team. I was always interested in him, but if it's someone getting suspended for half a season, it's a risk you have to take. It's still a risk, I have to take because he may somehow, some way find himself in that situation. But getting more clarity there, sure up my first round pick, and obviously people behind me being one person with Dave allowed me to kind of double up with what I wanted to do with Aaron Jones. So I really like my running backs a lot. Receivers, I mean, we'll go through the trades later on, but receivers, people kind of gave me shit for that, and I understand why. It doesn't look sexy when you kind of break it down in terms of just simply namesake. But I really enjoy my wide receiver 1 and 2. Tight end, again, if you don't have one of the top 3 guys, 4 guys, you're rolling the dice anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But the biggest piece for me is the bench. People don't really have strong benches,
No.
and we'll see that as we go through these teams. But to have someone like James Robinson, who again could be nothing, he could be the RB2 in that system. He could get no sort of work, and the injury hinders him, and that's fine. It's a 10th round pick when I picked him, but and Boston Scott again, just kind of somebody who's just there. But Elijah Moore, Hunter Renfro, Kadarius Toney, MVS, those guys are receivers that have a lot of upside, especially Renfro. I mean, I believe I spoke to Dana today or earlier. Him and Keenan had a 100 yards of separation in regards to their stats last year, and that was it. So if you're telling me I get a Keenan Allen type of player, mind you, yes, the situation is different. Later on in the draft on my bench, can't really go wrong with that. So I just like the names I picked up. Obviously, again, it's not even week 1 yet, so a lot of this can change very quickly. But just at first glance, I really liked what I did and kind of implemented my strategy pretty well.
Yeah, I mean it's kind of I think so, and let's look at the trades here just for fun because again I don't want to spend too much time on it because I mean we haven't even played a game yet, but I think it's important because these are moves that obviously could impact you later in the season. You did trade it was great in the chat. Dave wasn't there, but it was awesome when you took Justin Herbert. That was awesome. I really did not expect you to take a quarterback that early. I usually am against it. I know you usually are against it too, but you pulled the trigger on it. You traded Herbert and Jalen Tolbert for Mahomes and Thomas. Obvious reaction is you look at Mahomes and Herbert pretty equally, and Thomas is an upgrade over Tolbert, right?
Yeah, I mean, I would say I would have the edge with Herbert being the better fantasy quarterback. I did like Herbert. I just knew that for starters, I wanted Herbert, and if I had not drafted him in the 3rd round, there he wasn't making it back to me. People kind of know that Dave likely was locked in to Herbert and or Mike Williams. Still surprised he didn't take Mike Williams in the 4th round. We'll get to that when we get to Dave's team, but I do view Herbert as the better quarterback. However, the upside of Thomas, who again we'll get it to in a second, was just too good to pass up if I'm just giving up Jalen Tolbert and a very, very minuscule gap between Herbert and Mahomes.
Yeah, and then obviously you turn that around. We made the trade today. It's gonna be kind of interesting to talk about like who wins the trade here. I will say obviously in that Dave trade, I think you won that simply because you got Mahomes and Thomas, which I think I mean the difference between Herbert and Mahomes this year points wise, I don't think it's gonna be that much, and if they play all their games. But the next trade, Michael Thomas and Amon-Ra St. Brown, you could argue 2 number 1s going for Marquise Brown, but you've told me time and time again you're a big Hollywood Brown fan this year. I know you're a Kyler guy. Is it just you love Hollywood Brown that much to give up 2 wide receiver ones?
Yeah, I do. I do like, not that I don't like Amon-Ra St. Brown. I do like Amon-Ra St. Brown. There's just so much, not uncertainty,
Say
but
his name
there's
again.
Amon-Ra St. Brown.
There we go. Okay.
There's just so many mouths to feed there in regards to Swift, Hawkinson, Amon-Ra St. Brown. They brought in Shark. So like it's not that I don't like the receiver. The volume wasn't necessarily the best. So getting someone like Marquise Brown for me was something I wanted to do just because again it's somebody who's the wide receiver 1 in that team. Kyler loves to chuck the ball around, so you can't really go wrong with that. And giving him Michael Thomas, yes, I know on paper it looks worse than it is in my mind because I know you can attest to this. stacking your running back and wide receiver usually kills you. I know it's Michael Thomas, and he was great years ago, and we don't really know what he's capable of now. But stacking your wide receiver and running back usually kills you week in and week out. I just don't
Yeah,
want to do it.
and there's a lot of teams that did not just that, but others, and we're gonna, like I said, yeah, we're gonna see that. My thing, the way I looked at it from my perspective is, and Marquise or Monroe St. Brown almost put up the same numbers as Mark. Literally, he had one less catch and 100 less yards. Amon-Ra St. Brown. And I know you're going to look at him going to Arizona and you're hoping those numbers rise. Does he become a 1,500 receiver? I don't know. I mean, Amon-Ra St. Brown, one less catch, 100 less yards last year. And if anything, I could see Amon-Ra going higher this year, another year in that offense. And then I get to take the flyer on Michael Thomas and see what he can do. I think Jameis Winston is going to throw for 4,000 if he stays healthy. I think he was on pace for 5,000 yards last year. If Michael Thomas is healthy, I can't imagine both these guys not being 1,000-yard receivers this year. And in some way, I could see, yeah, Marquise Brown being the same, but I was happy to take it. I feel like it made my thin receivers a little bit deeper. So I mean, yeah, we'll see how it works out. We'll have to look
Yep.
back on it.
And one thing I wanted to add too, just at the end of that, your statement there, it made your thin receivers, it bulked them up. It gave you more depth. To me, I had too much depth, which is never a bad thing. But when it comes to receivers, for right now, I would rather trust the upside of Elijah Moore, Hunter Renfrow, Kadarius Toney, just because they have played football in the last 2 seasons. Michael Thomas dealing with a hamstring injury kind of sucks. I hope he comes back just because football is better with him in it.
Right.
At the same time, not just don't do well against the Panthers and we're fine, which will probably happen either way. But you didn't. You wanted more depth. I wanted to kind of solidify my wide receiver 2 position just to kind of get more consistency, which didn't. Marquise Brown isn't really a consistent wide receiver. However, I do feel like being in an offense with Kyler can elevate his game to another level.
Yeah, and heck, I pretty much I look at it as it was my 5th round pick, got a 5th round pick, and then also got the 7th round pick. So yeah, we'll see how it works out. But like I said, you went Kamara Jones, you went running back strategy early. You did take the strike on Herbert. You paired that with Williams, which obviously are gone now. So let's take a look at your team in its current state and kind of see what we think about it. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, obviously, as a running back here. You do have a lot of depth here. Here's what I put on my little notes for you. I think you got a top tier running back squad. I mean, how can you not like Aaron Jones and Kamara? I think both those guys are 1st round picks. Now, who knows how much more of a committee it becomes in Green Bay, which could hurt Jones a little bit. But he's a touchdown hog. He gets what he needs to get. Until I don't see it, I'll believe it. I think you got some go big or go home receivers though. Mike Williams has never been a huge reception guy. I think obviously he was starting to do that a little bit more last year. Marquise Brown's kind of known as that deep threat guy. I was even a little surprised myself when I saw he had 80 or 90 catches last year. I could actually see Marquise Brown's catches going down, but his yards going up this year, and his touchdowns going up a little bit this year. 90 catches. That I didn't even know he had that many, so that was good for him last year. I will say Hunter Henry, like you said, out of the top 3-4 tight ends, he's a nice little tier below that. You do have some nice depth on your bench. That quarterback, running back stack of Mahomes, Helaire, though, little bit worrisome. And then you need more Renfro or Tony to be awesome. I mean, you have that bench, you have those guys, but if you're playing matchups each week and you pick wrong and you're losing matchups by 4 or 5 points because you could have picked that guy or you could have picked this guy, it'd be really nice if one of those guys can just pop off and make the decision really easy for you. So yeah, that's kind of my thought process on your team. Was there anything more you want to add on your side?
No, I feel like we covered it. I mean, yeah, you're correct with having to play the right guy. I'm hoping that Renfro kind of establishes himself as that guy in that offense. So that's kind of the game I'll play in that last flex spot. But
Mm-hmm.
outside of that, it's kind of not a set in and forget it lineup by any means. I don't think any lineup is that, but a lot of these guys kind of are locked in for their spots.
All right, so let's hear it, Krim. We both have our power rankings next to us. I have not seen yours. You have not seen mine. We've made sure to not talk about what we think. Like I said, I'm very curious to who Crimson has as his playoff teams compared to mine. We've had very little discussion on that for a reason. Where do you put yourself in the first edition of these power rankings?
I mean, I told you I was putting myself number one. I went ahead and put myself number three. I didn't put myself number one.
You put
I do
yourself
think
number
I
three, okay?
number three. I do think that I have a solid squad. I do think that my running backs kind of carry that number three tag if I had to give myself that. However, I know that there are still holes. There's like it's not a roster that someone looks at and just goes, "Wow, that roster is, doesn't have any weaknesses anywhere." Sometimes you do find that with teams, but this one obviously the receivers, like you said, are very hit or miss. They're either going to have a really good week and I'm going to likely win my week, or they're going to give me this 4 points they gave me that week, and then I'm kind of hoping that Kamara or Jones hits a home run and scores 30, and I pull out a win that way. But it is hit or miss for sure. That's why I wouldn't give myself number one by any means.
All right, well, that's interesting because in the 12 teams we got, I also have you at number 3 in the power rankings. So I got you in the 3 spot. You have yourself in the 3 spot. We'll have to make sure we get all this at the end to see what fun we got. So me and you both have Creamy at 3. So that's where the first team is going to land. We'll see how it, and we know, if anything we know about Crimson, we know this team. Take a look at it now. It will look nowhere near like this in 4 weeks, let alone 8 weeks or 12. It will look completely different. So it'll be interesting to see what names we see on this roster at the end of the year. Yeah. So let's do it. You got the number 3 team now, Krim, but after a few more moves, it could be 8 or 9.
It
We'll
could
see.
be 8 or 9, or it could be number one. Like you never know.
You never know, right? But until you get a ring, I guess we will have to wait. So let's go to the next team below yourself in that division, which would be
Which would
um,
be Dana.
Dana. All right, let's get to it. Dana's team is next. Looking at Dana's team, obviously his draft strategy was interesting. We heard him in the chat. It's fun doing the chat on draft night just to hear people's thoughts live. He went Eckler early, obviously proving his first round value. Big PPR guy if he can stay on the field. He went probably the most interesting strategy. He kind of took it out of someone's playbook, if I may. He went tight end round 2 and 3. He passed up on guys like Debo, Mike Evans, Tyreek Hill, Zeke, Fournette. What did you take about that tight end strategy? Is it a smart move? Is it smart that early? He arguably gets the two best tight ends in, or Kelsey, obviously, maybe tight end 1 and 3, 1 and 2. Who knows? He's clearly very high on both these guys. Tight end strategy. What do you think?
Yeah, not that I wasn't a fan of it. I did speak to him after the draft and realized why he had done it. However, I did think that if he didn't like the running backs I went after, which I believe were James Conner and
Yeah.
Montgomery, correct?
Yeah, he was
So if he
saying it in
was,
the draft night too that he's like
yeah,
all these guys just kept getting taken right
yeah.
before him,
So
right
I
before
mean,
him. So
and his target was Evans. So if you break it down to him getting Evans, it looks a lot, I would say, better. However, it does not look bad. So I don't mind going Andrews because Andrews I feel like was the pick there, and he made the right choice there. But going Pitts, it was a power move in my eyes. I mean, it may have had him take a hit as a receiver, which not really. He didn't like anybody up there with Evans, so I can understand why you would pivot off. And running back wise, you didn't like those two that were there, so your choice is to go quarterback, which Mahomes, Herbert, and Allen are gone. So you don't. I wouldn't have done that, and he didn't. Or tight end again, which I mean, all it takes is Mark Andrews to go off 1 week, Pitts to go off 1 week, and somebody lose their game because they have someone like Tyler Higbee score them 3 points in a week, and they lose because of that. To just go to Dana and say, "Hey, like I need a tight end, I can rely on week in and week out," and I believe that probably 8 of our teams in the league have that guy who is not going to really perform. Maybe 7. However, the market is there for them. It's just a matter of getting into the season. Then they kind of garner more interest, and then from there, Dana's kind of had this pick of the litter. So it's
yeah,
not a bad move, but it's a future move.
and I noticed that a lot. People are kind of doubling up on tight end. I mean, Kyle mentioned it a few times during the draft. He was like, stop doubling up on tight ends. I think people are kind of hoping like, hey, I draft 2, kind of around the same. Maybe one will hit off. Dana went for I'm going to draft 2 elite ones. Whether it becomes trade bait or Kyle Pitts pretty much becomes the number 1 guy in Atlanta. I mean, he could put up. I mean, Andrews and Pitts, we know Andrews can put up wide receiver 1 numbers. He did it last year. Pitts isn't that far off if he can actually get in the end zone. If he scores 1 touchdown again, obviously not going to be worth it. But Some other things I'm going to say about Dane's team before I let you kind of rattle off what you think of his team as a whole. PPR goodness. I mean, he's got PPR all over this team. Eckler is going to be huge PPR. Deontay Johnson, I believe, had, let's see, over close to 100, over 100 catches last year. Okay. Kyle Pitts, Mark Andrews, big tight ends. Jalen Waddle, okay, last year, how many catches did he have? 104 with 140 targets. Um, he's got like if this was a PPR whole point league, I think Dane's team would be even better. But the fact that it's a half point PPR league, it still bodes well for him. Like I said, every single one of these guys is going to rack up the catches. We'll see what Dameon Pierce does in Houston. I think Godwin in the 7th round was one of the big sleepers in this draft. I really think so. When you got guys like Cordero Patterson, Kareem Hunt, Rashad Penny going after that, not bad. But Chris Godwin, I think people are sleeping on him. And the fact that he went in the 7th round, I think is going to scare some people. But here's what he needs. He needs touchdown production. None of these guys are screaming double digit touchdowns except maybe Eckler. Waddle didn't do it. Deontay Johnson, how close was he last year? He had a 8 touchdowns. We got a lot of guys with like 8, 9 touchdowns, 8, 9 touchdowns. Not bad, but we don't quite have that big touchdown target. And again, Pitts last year getting in the end zone once. Does he jump that up to 5? Or does he make that big jump to 10? That would be huge for him. So I think PPR wise, he looks good. The bench, kind of a no name bench, but I will say, with that being said, I think he's got some guys that could have high ceilings and pop off. Are these guys he can count on right now to jump into his lineup and do something? No, not really many of these guys. But I do think he has guys that are right there ready to take a spot. But unfortunately, with the news yesterday, Krim, one of them is going to take a little bit of a hit on his bench, but that definitely hurts his team a little bit with the Robinson news. What do you think? I kind of spieled out my thoughts on Dane's team. Similar thoughts or thinking differently?
No, I would say that you're pretty much on the money with that. He does have pieces that are going to be interesting throughout the season. He does not have somebody that screams touchdowns. However, I do think that Kyle Pitts can be much better than he was last year. Had 1,000 yards, had 1 touchdown. You get 5 more touchdowns, and you're looking like another Mark Andrews. So having 2 Mark Andrews on your team is not a bad thing. However, some of these guys are unproven, like Dameon Pierce. Tyler Boyd needs to kind of get a bigger role there for him to kind of be able to rely on him. And like you said, Brian Robinson, he's missing that, so now his running backs take a little bit of a hit there. But he's got guys who can produce. James Cook, if he gets that job, is going to be a monster in Buffalo. And pairing him with Eckler moving forward is a solid RB1 and 2. It's just a matter of, can these guys actually give you what you need, or are you going to have to make a move, week 4, week 5, because you haven't
Yeah.
seen what you actually wanted.
And that's the thing too, is running back issue is going to could crop up fast for him. If his running backs aren't producing, if he has one injury on the running backs, whatever the case may be, that is not going to be good for him. So we'll see what he might have to make a trade for a running back. I think his whole bench is darn near wide receivers now. Who knows when Robinson's going to come back from that? So it's tough. I like the team as a whole if it stays healthy. But obviously you're going to hear that a lot come fantasy wise. Derek Carr, not a bad little option late in the draft too. That's one of the things we always talk about each and every year is how you can get really good quarterbacks late in the draft, especially with us being a 1 quarterback league. So, with that being said, we've kind of shared our thoughts on it. I'll start off first here since I made you rank yourself. I have Dana as the 6th best team in the league on my power rankings. Number 6. Obviously, I think the fact that he's got an elite running back and Eckler helps a lot to kind of disguise his RB troubles a bit.
I have Dana as number 5. I do like his team's upside. I do think that if these guys produce the way they have in the past, they can be really good. It's just there's so much uncertainty with some of these players. I couldn't rank him any higher, but I do think that 5 is very strong.
All right, so you got Dana at 5. I got Dana at 6. You have yourself at 3. I also have you at 3. So we've already covered 2 top 6 teams according to us. So we got some interesting takes to come up. So let's jump to that 3rd team in the division. And again, we're going to go division by division here. So we're still on Division 1. It is your blood, your brother, Chop Squad, Trey Charles, who decided he was going to let the AI decide for him on the first few picks until he had the inevitable what the fuck moment and took back over himself. When you look at this team, or is it a what the fuck moment? Do you think it worked out all right? Break it down for me on how your brother did. Don't speak too loud. We don't want him in here. We don't want to come in here and get a rare appearance on him.
I mean, yeah, I don't know why he chose to auto draft. I feel like he didn't trust himself a little bit. However, his whole stance was it doesn't matter who I take. They just need it's a dice roll, it's a lottery, yada yada yada. Which, to a degree, yes, it is true. However, there is more to it than just that. But Dana stated when the draft was going on, Trey is one of the best teams in the league, and I would say that the way the draft broke down to begin with, he got Devontae, he got no, we got Najee, Devontae, AJ Brown were his first three picks, George Kittle. If those guys can be what we know them to be, that core is very strong. However, moving forward, once it took Antonio Gibson for him, it made his team look weaker. You don't have a true RB2 because you have Najee and Antonio Gibson who lost his job. Unfortunately, yesterday we heard that Brian Robinson was shot. He may not play this year because getting shot in your leg, I believe it's going to take a long time to recover from that. Ramp back up. Who knows what his timetable is. So you get a little bit of Antonio Gibson relief because of that, which is very unfortunate. But it does help his team. I mean, I hate to say it, but getting a starting back like that now at a value bolsters his squad to where he can now move Michael Carter into a flex spot if he trusts him, where that running back situation is murky. They get Brees Hall. You don't know who's going to get the touches that week. It might be a hot hand situation. Who knows? But Michael Carter last year was good. So if he can even just get some of the work in that backfield, he can still be valuable to a degree. And Amari Cooper is Amari Cooper. I mean, who knows how he does with Jacoby Brissett, but it seems like whoever Amari has, he's usually fine. So I can't knock him for that. The biggest thing here for him is his running back depth. If you don't get Gibson as your starter, and Brian Robinson doesn't face that kind of time off because of what had happened, you're not looking that strong. You're looking at Najee, you're looking at Michael Carter, you're looking at backups out the wazoo, and hoping that someone somehow takes over a job or someone gets hurt and you have that person who's already filling in, which is a lot of what these running backs are. Davis Price, Arnold Jones, Michael Carter. You're hoping that these guys carve out their own roles, and that's where it becomes an issue. And to me, that's the biggest weakness with this team is that the depth is not there at running back, and it really truly wasn't the strongest part because you had no RB2 coming out of the draft.
Yeah, my thing with Trey's team is, like I said, you mentioned his first four picks. I think started really solid. I mean, Najee, Devontae, Brown, Kittle, but man, there's just a lot I don't like about the rest of it. I mean, I mean, we're gonna say it a few times tonight, but AJ Brown and Devontae Smith on the same lineup, it's just not smart. I mean, not saying that they're not good receivers, not saying that they won't do their thing, but I mean, if AJ Brown gets 2 touchdowns one week and Devontae Smith gets 40, I mean, it's not going to be many weeks where both are scoring and both are doing it. That's just tough to have in your lineup week in and week out. The one running back I was staying away from in the draft in the first round, this is just my opinion, I could be completely wrong on this, is Najee Harris. The dude's a physical beast, but I'll say this. He averaged 3.9 yards a carry last year on a semi decent Steelers offense. Big Ben's gone, new quarterback, lots of new things changing there. Najee Harris is going to have 6, 7, 8 in the box on him at all times. He didn't even average 4 yards a carry last year. He had 300 rushes and 74 catches. He had almost 400 touches last year. Granted, I know he was a rookie, but also 74 catches and like 450 yards. Dude was the definition of a dump off running back. But I'm just not high on him. I think he's going to be ran to the ground. I think teams are going to key on him. I don't think they're going to have a passing game. They're going to be down in games. Sorry, Steelers fans that are in here. I'm just not riding your team this year. You could shoot me a message later when they're 5-0. But I just don't like what he did after the fact. I mean, George Kittle, fine, injury concern. Amari Cooper is going to have an awful year with Jacoby Brissett. I'm sorry. Never been an Amari Cooper fan. Look what numbers he put up last year, and then now he's got Jacoby Brissett as his quarterback. It's not going to go well. Um, and then the bench, Mike Gesicki could be a top 10 tight end, could be some trade bait. Christian Watson could maybe fill into that role when he ever steps on the field. I just really don't see much at all on this bench here. Like I said, I like the first four names he went, but I think it went really, really down south after that. So with that being said, I actually have Trey as my 10th best team. Where do you got him?
I like it. I like it a bit more than you do. I like the core. I do think that, he's a trade or two away from solidifying things. He picked up Justin Fields and dropped Matt Stafford, which after Fields threw 3 touchdowns, I don't blame him for that. He could be something special in an offense that
That's ballsy.
is ballsy, but I mean,
That's
he's
ballsy.
he's got the ability to move. He's just got more upside at this point in time than Stafford does. Uh, Not saying he's better, not saying the move was fantastic. Just it's a simply an upside move because you have Burrow. You're not going to really not start Burrow.
Right.
But yeah, I have him a bit higher than you do. I have him at 8.
All right, you got him at 8. I got him at 10. Not bad. Not bad. You got him right a little bit below the mid-tier average in the thing. So not too bad. You
I
said
do. I will say that it is mainly because Devontae and AJ Brown, I feel like, are poised for good years. They're both elite receivers, and a lot of these teams are going to need those guys moving forward. Those are just like dudes who are solidified. So having those two and Najee, if he produces like he did last year, cool. I don't think he does either. I actually put him on my no draft list, much like you did. So I don't trust him. But if he gets the same Najee, I feel like that those 3 guys are pretty stout.
Yeah, we'll see if there's any regression coming Najee's way. Again, second year player, who knows? I did the whole Trent Richardson thing one year, and not trying to compare it, but oh my god, that
I
was probably
remember that.
that was probably my most miserable year in fantasy. It was just everything went bad that year. It was awful. All right, let's go to the next team on the list. So we've gone through half the division of Division One. Let's go to Pistol Pleats Platoon. He was probably the name that was mentioned most during the draft because of the way he was drafting. There was a lot of thoughts, including mine, during draft night on where he went. Um, Here's my thing. Obviously, in fantasy, me and you've talked about this before. If you like a dude that much more than another guy, and he's 4 or 5 spots below where you think he is, take him. That's fine. If you really like that guy, I have no problem with that. But there's just something about the guys he picked where it's just like, man, I don't like that guy as much. I don't like that guy as much. I don't like that guy as much. And it really started with like, I would say, I don't know, rounds 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in that range, where I was just like, I don't hate those guys, but I don't like them to be like your go-to guys. That was kind of my thought process on Peter's draft. Take it away. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't hate Peter's draft. There are some names here that are solid names. Like obviously, Justin Jefferson in the first, you can't really go wrong. However, I know why he drafted these players. Kyle knows why. Bryce knows why. You guys make fun of us for knowing why. However, we know why he did it. And it seemed like he didn't have his own direction, really. He kind of just based it off of that information, and that was it. He didn't really take that information and use it to his advantage because I'll go over to the Sleeper app real quick just to look at the results. What you mentioned earlier was the Allen Robinson pick in round 4. That pick to me was odd because you're
Very
relying on
odd.
a wide receiver 2 on a good offense, yes, but a wide receiver 2 over wide receiver 1 such as DJ Moore, Terry McLaurin, Cortland
Just start
Sutton.
rattling them off. Start rattling them off.
Brand
T. Higgins.
even T
Yeah.
Higgins is a wide receiver 2, but I know Burrow can support that. Not that Stafford can't. But what did we really see from the likes of his wide receiver 2 last year? Not a
I
whole
don't.
lot.
I don't even know. Like honestly, Waddle went to Dane in round 5. I would have maybe taken Waddle
Yeah.
over Allen
I
Robinson
mean,
personally.
and when you look at it, it's not that it's awful. It's not awful. It's not a bad pick. I don't think it's, complete garbage. It just is head scratcher to where there's other players with more volume as to where you could have taken them. Mind you, Pittman I like myself, so I can't really crap on that pick. I do like it, but if you look at when moving forward, I mean, he just didn't really get a lot of like he has players that are good. There's no standout player outside of Justin Jefferson and Jalen Hurts, and Peter will agree with this that he probably feels comfortable with playing every single week. Although I would disagree with some of that. They're in situations where they're tough. Pittman should get riddled with targets. That's fine. AJ Dillon should be a fine running back as your RB2. Javonte should be fine as well, but these aren't guys who really stand out where you picked them.
Right.
Again, we can go over this all day long. I don't think Peter's team as a whole is absolute shit by any means. It's just the fact that the team could have been so much better had you pivoted in certain spots. And it shows on the bench that it hurt him because you have a single running back on your bench. So now your running backs become Javonte Williams, AJ Dillon, Rashad Penny. Rashad Penny's been hurt before. So if he goes down, you don't have the Seahawks backup, which is fine. You don't have to handcuff everybody that you have, but it's a race to get that person now. If you have to slot in one of you guys on your bench as your flex, Brandon Ayuk, perfectly fine receiver. Isaiah McKenzie, we don't know what he's all about. Rondale Moore, we don't know what he's all about. Sammy Watkins, he'll have a good week one, and then he'll just disappear into the wind and never hear from him again. And Garrett Wilson, again, rookie receiver, we don't know what he's all about. There's no options on the bench that really strengthen his team if anyone goes down or isn't performing. So you have this core here, and that's it. You have nothing to kind of fall back on. So it's all or nothing for Peter, and that to me is very risky.
Yeah, my thing with Peter's team, like I said, it was just an odd draft. Like, I mean, honestly, let's look at his running backs. AJ Dillon, committee. Javonte Williams, I know he's going high in drafts, and I had him in a lot of leagues last year, but he still has Melvin Gordon behind him. And until Melvin Gordon isn't Melvin Gordon, I'm going to believe in it. So committee. Rashad Penny, committee, probably with Walker. So there's not a running back you can sit there and trust in and week out. And then, oh, by the way, I'm not a huge Pittman fan. I'm just not. And I don't know why people think like Matt Ryan going over there like jumps him up these boards. He had a good year last year. Carson Wentz was his quarterback. I don't know why Matt Ryan coming to town is going to just make him all of a sudden that next guy unless people really think he's going to take another jump this year. I don't hate his receivers, but a lot of just prove it guys. Allen Robinson's a prove it guy. Like this is a what have you done for me lately league, and Peter's really buying in to that Allen Robinson train when, like you said, DJ Moore just did it last year. Terry McLaurin just did it last year. Jalen Waddle just did it last year. Why are you betting on the guy that didn't do it last year at all? I mean, I know the Rams are that offense. He might just slide in and do it. I could be eating my words soon, but that's just the way I'm looking at it. Represent Cole Kmet though. Tight end one for Peter. I love it. Me and Krim are both rocking some Bears tight end jerseys. There we go. He's got the Greg Olson on. So my thing is, I don't know. I see Peter's upside on his team. It's kind of like his baseball team. I actually put that in the notes weirdly enough because we kind of shit on his baseball team a little bit because there was a lot of prove it guys. I said the same thing for baseball. High ceiling, they got to prove it. They got to prove it. And they're going to have to prove that they are the guy this year. Maybe Dillon does take over that role. Maybe Williams does put Melvin Gordon in the dust. But it's a lot of what if questions instead of just getting that guaranteed product guy. And all a wide receiver bench nearly. I mean, he's got one running back. The rest are wide receivers. He's going to need some breakouts. He's going to need some breakouts on this team. So I have Peter as my 9th best team in the league. Where do you got him?
It's funny that you say that because I do think it is like his baseball team. It can go very poorly, but like this year in his baseball terms, it went very well, and it can go very well. I do believe that Peter's team can be a surprise. It can definitely has guys that can kind of do that. However, as it stands, I'm not the biggest fan of his team, and I have him lower than you do. I have him at 11.
All right. Wow. How about that? Okay. So Peter comes in at number 11 on Crim's ratings and number 9 on my ratings. Now we are going to go down to the next team in the division. We're down to what? The last
two teams here.
Last two teams in the division. And we got the newbie. We got the newbie Bryce Beantown boys coming in entering the league as our rookie. Thank you, Justin, for being in the league these last couple of years. We'll miss you. Hopefully, we can get you back in one of these football ones eventually. But let's talk about the new guy. Bryce came in, he drafted. And what did you think about his first draft in the sideline? Oh man, I totally forgot to be doing the histories on some of these guys. Oh,
Yeah, that's on me. That's on me. I
no, it's
mean,
yeah.
I
But real
also
quick, just
forgot.
just for fun, let me just throw it in here real quick. We did Trey is 38 and 56 in league history. He's been in it for all 7 years. He's got 0 playoff appearances. Okay, 0. He's the one guy that's been in the league every year that does not have a playoff appearance. So that's why I guess he let the computer draft for him. Dana, on the other hand, okay, Dana is actually has the most wins. This is a very interesting stat. He has the most regular season wins out of any team in the league. He's been in all 7 years, so that might help a little bit. But he's actually only made the playoffs twice. He's got a 53 and 41 record with 2 playoff appearances, and he's 3-2 in the playoffs. He's made the championship a couple times. But kind of interesting, Krim, that you have a below 500 record, have made the playoffs 5 times. He's got a well above 500 record, only made it twice.
If there's anyone
Um,
who hates the divisions more than Dana, let me know, because I think he hates them the most because he gets stuck in them. He goes out, wins 9 games. The top 3
it's
teams
happened
win
a
10,
couple times.
and he just sits there and discuss. So
Yeah. One more to go through because I messed up on the histories, my fault. And then we'll do Bryce, obviously newbie. Peter is been in the league for 5 years now. He came in the same year Kyle did. He is 33 and 33 in 5 years with 3 playoff appearances. So we got 3-3-3-3. He has a 4-2 record in the postseason, and he obviously did get the championship in the 2020 season. So he is part of that elusive club
yeah,
that is starting to raise a little bit, but a complete 500 record through 5 years, and we've seen it from Peter's teams. I mean, he knows it. His teams are usually either good or bad. There's not an in between. So we'll see what happens this year. So now we go to Bryce's team. He is a first year guy, so he doesn't have any league history. Let's get right back at it. Bryce's team, Crimmy, what do you think?
I like it. I like it. I actually like Bryce's team quite a bit. I know that you'll be indifferent about this one, and I knew that going in, but I really like Bryce's running backs and James Conner and Dalvin Cook. I absolutely love the depth he has with Chase Edmonds. Doesn't really have the biggest of pieces on the bench, but Khalil Herbert can be serviceable, especially if Montgomery gets dinged up, which he tends to miss a couple games every season. And Naheem Hines it will be involved. I don't know to what degree, but he'll definitely be involved. So I like that part of things. I think he has strong receivers. Brandon Cook's always a gem, even though he's on bad teams, playing with bad cues. He always can come through in the clutch for you. He's always a solid option for you. T. Higgins on a good offense, love it. CeeDee Lamb, to me, I don't really like him myself, but if he's your wide receiver 1 being CeeDee Lamb, and then your 2 and 3 being Cooks and Higgins, I can live with it because you're looking for that upside there. And the Trey Lance pick to me was fantastic. I mean, I loved that pick. I do think Trey Lance can be a league winner for sure. He can also perform like shit and not do anything, but the upside is there. You have Tom Brady, so the likelihood of you playing Trey Lance isn't really high. But if he breaks out and someone comes calling for a Q, like you've got yourself a lot of value there. So I do like Bryce's team overall. I think it is pretty well put together, especially for someone who's in their first draft and isn't really accustomed to how people do draft around him. I think he did a very good job.
My thing is, like, I hate to drive the Mike Evans train. We'll get there when we get to Rob, but like I like CeeDee Lamb myself, but like why is Mike Evans always slept on? Like the dude's 1,000 yards every year. He had 14 touchdowns last year. Okay? CeeDee Lamb had around this exact same amount of yards with 6 touchdowns. And I mean, I just don't get it. I don't know why Mike Evans gets slept on every single season.
If I had to give you any reason, it's because of the competition. There's no competition there in Dallas for CeeDee Lamb until Gallup comes back.
So
No
he gets the number
strong
one
competition.
corner on him, maybe double teamed.
However, there's no strong competition there from Mike Evans either because Godwin is injured. So you have Julio, who's not the greatest anymore. You have Russell Gage, who's not even practicing right now, and Chris Godwin is probably not at full strength week 1. So, I mean, yes, I would agree with you. Mike Evans is a higher wide receiver in my rankings in regards to that. But I think people are kind of under the impression and operating as if um, Evans is in an offense with a fully healthy Godwin and not really realizing that he's going to get fed targets like
Yeah.
crazy to begin the year.
Yeah, here's my thing on Bryce's team. I think there's a lot of touchdowns on this team. James Conner was hugely touchdown dependent last year. I kind of said my thoughts on him during the draft. I am not a big James Conner guy. I'm just not. That's another guy that does not average hardly 4 yards a carry. He had 15 touchdowns last year. Is anyone really going to put their stake on the claim that he's going to get 15 again? I mean, I'm not. He actually had the worst yards per attempt of his career last year. Okay, he had 750 yards. He had 200 carries. I just not a big James Conner guy. It's really hard to predict touchdowns year in and year out like that. But he's got Connor with touchdowns. He's got Cook with touchdowns. He's got hopefully CeeDee Lamb can kind of jump into that role with the touchdowns, only 6 last year. But he's got dudes that have had big touchdown potential. T. Higgins is obviously going to be on a big offense there. He's got a lot of 1,000-yard receivers. Higgins isn't a 1,000-yard receiver. Cooks is. Lamb is. So Lockett is, right? I mean, he hit 1,000 last year, but I know a lot of people are down on him with his quarterback situation. So he's got the guys. But overall, solid receiver core, one of the weaker benches, in my opinion. Eno Benjamin, maybe. I know he's handcuffing it. Khalil Herbert, maybe could be a starter some weeks. Corey Davis, and then I do like Lockett, but again with that quarterback situation, I think it's a huge question mark on Lockett this year. Who really knows who's going to eat more in that Metcalf Lockett situation? But Bryce's team is just kind of. I almost wanted to do the whole blah thing for his team. It's fine, but it's not like shiny to me. I'm not in love with it. I don't hate it. It's just okay. I'm not a big Chase Edmonds guy. I'm not a big James Conner guy. So that's just my own opinion. Overall, I have Bryce as the eighth best team though. So not quite playoffs, but could be there. Where do you got him?
Yeah, that is the biggest difference between us. Because 8 for me was Trey. Bryce for me is number 2. I love Bryce.
Wow! Holy hell! Dang. Okay. I thought you'd slob his knob a little bit more if you got him at number
No,
two.
no, I mean he's number 2. Like, I said it. I love his team. If Trey Lance can be the Trey Lance that the fantasy world expects him to be, last year's Jalen Hurts, his team looks fantastic to me.
You're a James Conner guy too, though, right? You like James
I
Conner?
that's and that I knew that's where we would differ because I think James Conner is going to be good this year in this offense. Yes, he doesn't have the yardage that you would
Who's the
want
head
from a
coach?
running back. Cliff Kingsbury.
Right, and he throws 45 times a game.
Yes. However, let me give you a little information on that. He does throw a lot, yes. I do think that because James Conner doesn't have anybody behind him to push him for snaps, he'll be more involved. And he was very sure-handed last year. I think he might have dropped one pass. I think he was either 38 targets, he got 37 balls, or 39 targets, he got 37 balls. Whatever it was, not a lot of
Yeah, I was
catches.
gonna say
But
37's on the lower end,
he
right?
was very efficient when he was given the
Yeah.
chance. That's why I like him so much.
All right, wow, that's a big difference. So you got Bryce as the number 2 team. Wow, Krim coming in hot with Bryce. Bryce is going to be all over that. How about that? Number 2. He's got a lot
Serious.
to live up to there.
Yeah.
That's
I mean,
quite something.
do you have
All
anything
right,
to say about
so
your team? Eric ranked you 10th.
heck yeah.
You're already first one in the championship, nigga.
I got 3, buddy. I got 3. All right, so let's go to the next team then. Clearly, we had our first huge kind of change difference right there.
I knew that was going to be a big one because you of your not hatred, your dislike for James
Brandon
Conner.
Cooks,
I
James Conner,
I,
Chase
I
Edmonds.
love those guys, so it was bound to be a
Yeah.
massive gap.
All right. So let's go to the last team in the division then. Division 1, we are going to wrap it up with my ball, Zach Ertz, our good friend Kyle here. He is been in the league for 5 years now as well. This will be year number 6. He's got kind of a streak going on, okay? He, in 5 years, has the highest winning percentage in the league in terms of just pure winning percentage. Obviously, he hasn't been in it all the years to have the most wins, but he's kind of creeping up there. Kyle in 5 years has a 42-24 record, which is by far and away the best win percentage in the league. He's made the playoffs all 5 years. He is 5 for 5. He has never missed it. But when it comes playoff time, he is 2-5 when it matters the most. He's trying to get his first championship in this league. But he has the record for most consecutive playoff appearances, 5 in a row, 5 for 5. And I feel like every single year we've done this show, Krim, I don't like his team. Okay? I don't like his team. I don't like his team. I don't like his team. And I'll tell you what, this year is different. This is a different story. Okay? I do like Kyle's team this year. Okay? And here's what I have to say about Kyle's team. Right? I think he has the best wide receiver duo, and it's not even close. Right? Can we put that to bed? Is that the best duo right now on paper?
Yeah, no, I would agree.
Okay. Not only does he have the best duo right there, who the heck is his number 3 receiver? DJ Moore. Okay. DJ Moore is his number 3 when he was, I mean, some people don't even have a guy like that as their number 1. I mean, seriously, some guys maybe have. I mean, DJ Moore is right up there. He never has good quarterback play. If you want to talk about a guy that's proven it year in and year out, you know me, Krim. I used to not be the biggest DJ Moore fan, but over a few years of doing it, he's proven that it doesn't matter who his quarterback is, he's going to get it done. Okay. I'm not huge on Cordell Patterson this year, but I think where you have him with what he does, I think you got to love that in that spot. The running backs, for how long he waited on running backs and how good his receivers are, I don't hate those running backs. I think Josh Jacobs is going to get the goal line carries. He's the workhorse there. I know they throw the ball a lot in Vegas, and I know people are a little down on Jacobs. David Montgomery in a contract year, if the Bears aren't going to run a dude into the ground, I mean, David Montgomery's going to get some tick this year, unless he gets hurt, which sometimes is an issue. Also with Kyle's team, let's scroll down a little bit. I think he has one of the best benches in the league. And there's a few different ways of looking at benches, I think, in fantasy football. I think there's a way of looking at it like, do you have a lot of guys that can kind of just fill in and like do what they need to do? Or do you have a mix of guys that can instantly go in, like a Lazard, okay, like maybe a Darrell Henderson? And you have guys that have the ability to be in your lineup week in and week out. Maybe Hilaire falls off. Pacheco's got some name to it. Spiller, okay? Alan Lazard could be the wide receiver 1 in Green Bay. Darrell Henderson, who knows what happens in that running back room. I think Kyle has one of the best benches in the league, and I think he's got one of the best balanced lineups in the league. David Njoku is the number 1 guy there. Who knows? I know we've been waiting a few years for that. But for how good his receivers are, Krim, I think his running backs could be worse. And then throw in the fact that his quarterback is, in a sense, a hybrid running back with the way he moves his legs. I like Kyle's team. What do you think?
Yeah, I do like Kyle's team as well. All the same reasons that you do. However, I'm not as high on his running backs as you are. I know that these guys they've been proven to be solid players. And in fantasy, they are pretty solid. I usually don't like Josh Jacobs. And every year I say, I don't like Josh Jacobs. He'll go out there and he'll be the RB10 consistently. Not fantastic, but definitely a value pick for sure. So I can't really knock him for that. However, I am afraid that he gets pushed for snaps a little bit, and it scares me again. But just looking at it as a whole, the receivers to me stand out a lot. I think that he wasn't necessarily lying when he has the best 2 receivers, the best receiving core in the league. I wouldn't say he has the best 2. I do think that Jefferson is higher than Diggs, whatever. That's something here or there. But Kyle's
I think you could argue that Diggs could have easily been drafted where Jefferson was, right?
You definitely can't argue it. You definitely can't argue it, but as a whole, yes, it does look great. He has a lot of upside on his bench with these 2 receivers and Dotson and Lazard. Running back wise, if Spiller's kind of useless until they take Eckler out of the equation or kind of give him rest here and there. But there are upside for all the running backs there. Gainwell, Henderson, Pacheco, Spiller. They all have, chances to be something. Patterson, I think, is the biggest question mark. I know that Kyle's statement was he was top 10 last year. He won't be top 10 this year. I mean, that. They're going to use other people. They're going to, assess their team as they need to. But I do think that Kyle's team is very well put together.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, really, when you look at it, and again, people knock on Josh Jacobs, and who knows what it's going to be like this year. But this is a guy who's had first 2 years of league, back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons. He's close to 10 touchdowns every year on a team that, again, doesn't really throw that much. doesn't really run that much. They throw a ton over there in Vegas. He just gets it done. He could have David Montgomery, I think, put up the exact same season last year. Realistically, 850, 900 yards with 7, 8 touchdowns, and I think he would gladly take that. Obviously, he's wanting a bit more there, but Darrell Henderson, there's no saying he won't be the number one guy there. And if Cordell Patterson even does 80% of what he did last year, I think he again would be pretty happy with that. So overall, I think Kyle's team is extremely balanced. I think it's good. Um, he's in a weird spot where I don't know if I'd make too many trades unless he can really swindle someone, because it's kind of one of those I got to kind of see it on the field a couple weeks to kind of know exactly what I'm getting. But overall, I like Kyle's team. I have him as actually the number 2 team in the league.
I have Kyle as the number 4 team in the league. However, on my notes, it does have Kyle and I essentially could be swapped. So he can be 3, he can be 4, I can be 3,
Nice.
he can be 4. He's a 3-4 guy, but I have him at 4.
All right, remember that, Kyle. He thinks you and his team are pretty much identical. So if we'll see how that pans out then.
However,
So
give me one last thing here.
Yep.
The running backs for me, that's what came into play with Kyle and Bryce. If Kyle had better